It's time to unravel the hidden mysteries of the universe. Time to uncover the truth hidden beneath the veil of lies. Time to transport your mind from the perverted matrix and connect with your higher consciousness into the world of the divine paradigm. The divine paradigm. And now your hosts of the divine paradigm, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin.
Aloha and welcome to the Divine Paradigm on KCOR Radio at kcorradio.com. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Tina Marie, and our guest is Chris H. Hardy, and we're going to talk about cosmic DNA at the origin. In this thought-provoking theory, systems scientist Chris H. Hardy, Ph.D., lays the foundations for a universe in which consciousness is the driving force of creation that we experience in our lives, and yet a hyperdimension of collective intelligence all the way to the origin. In a witty and well-informed style, Hardy takes us on a grand tour of the fifth dimension, black holes, the zero point, and vacuum, and the hottest cosmologies to show that adding this ISS hyperdimension of consciousness interlaced with hyperspace and hypertime not only is very consistent with most physics discoveries, but also explains why we are endowed with consciousness. Moving beyond the materialistic or random frameworks, Hardy views a new cosmological paradigm in which consciousness and matter evolve in synchrony, and a part of our being is hyperdimensional. From the point of origin in immense time before the first quantum, before particles and matter, space and time are born. This hyperdimension unfolds as a golden spiral driven by the pi ratio, an infinite spiral staircase. It bears on its innumerable spires a boundless field of information issued from parent universes that contains the imprint of all beings, worlds, and many past experiments. And yet this cosmic DNA is a field of potentials that is neither deterministic nor limiting for our own universe. Rather, it is a collective consciousness that will grow and choose its innumerable paths. It is the true dimension of ourselves and individual consciousness. So we are going to introduce our listeners to this subject. It's going to be very, very interesting. Sasha, what would you like to say before we bring on Chris H. Hardy, Ph.D.?
Yes, from my perspective as an anthropologist, one of our founders, a guy named A.L. Kroeber, talked about how once a time is ready for something, it comes out. The oikomene, the world of a membrane, so to speak, of Earth, sort of is ready for it. And I find a number of theorists in different using different symbol systems are coming up with, and it's the same thing that Chris has so eloquently put up. That is, at some place you get beyond the dimensions, and there's an interdimensionality, and that the the gateway within us is simultaneously touches on the gateway within everything and everyone, and we escape from the hierarchy of consciousness into a place where the singularity within each of us is instantaneously available to the singularity within each and every being and molecule, something like that. But Chris will explain it a lot better.
Welcome back to our show, Chris. Aloha, you there?
I'm so happy to be with you again. Very nice to be on KCOR. Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
We're excited that you're here. So maybe you can bring this down to a slower level and break it down so beginners can understand it, and then we'll take it to the quantum level. Tell us about your newest book, Cosmic DNA at the Origin. What is it about?
Well, the main point, as you know, is that I was working all my life on a conscious life on a theory of psi on consciousness, because I was experiencing, like you both are doing, I was experiencing the high state of consciousness under many types of psi phenomena, clairvoyance and precognition, and some PK also. And I thought that the models we had in psychology, in cognitive psychology, were clashing with the result that we were getting in experiments on psi, and because they were positive results. And nevertheless, it was also clashing also with the physics of at least the relativity Einsteinian type of physics, and not a little also with quantum physics. I have a different position from many parapsychologists, researcher colleagues of mine, because I was in this field to do my doctoral thesis, and I'm still a foot in this field. But they believe that you can explain psi phenomena through quantum physics. However, they are mostly relying up to now, it starts to change. They are mostly relying on the Copenhagen School of Quantum Physics, which is posing as a basis indeterminacy, which means that the basis of all that exists in the universe would be undeterministic. And of course, if you have this as a basis, then you cannot again explain consciousness. So now they are shifting a little more toward a Bohmian, David Bohm kind of framework to explain that there is some kind of implicate order. However, this theory is very interesting when you are talking about waves that are pilot waves theories, they are called. So the waves are piloted by something that is not of the same layer, which would come from an implicate order, but it does not. It is not integrated into the physics of that we can work on. It cannot help us to, and up to now, to solve equations, and it's just creating more unknown in the equations. Okay, and so basically, what I did was to develop a semantic field theory where I had already also very influenced by Carl Jung on the collective unconscious. By the fact that he himself was prone to have all kind of psi phenomena, and myself, I started with meditation on the psi phenomena happening to me when I was 18 years old. So there was one thing I could not doubt at all, was the fact that those phenomena existed, together with high state of consciousness, state of oneness, samadhis, that the connection to the cosmic consciousness. So consciousness was Chris, definitely something.
Chris, what kind of psi phenomena were you having? You said this is when you were 18 years old?
When I started meditation, it was like it was like a blooming and a very, very short, in a very short period of time. I started meditation. I must have been having a lot of previous incarnation that some I could remember as a yogi under a tree in India. But it's just like I started reading the Vedanta philosophy on the Upanishad of this Advaita Vedanta, the philosophy of oneness, of non-duality. And I started, I saw one posture of posture yoga, I just took the posture and poof, I was getting into a high state, which was not very high at that moment, but was still much higher than the ordinary state of consciousness. So I kept going on the as soon as I did some this kind of meditation, totally spontaneous, just feeling, because I was writing at the time poetry, and so I would keep exploring those states, trying to go each time further. I would meditate like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, whatever time it took, so that I could get to opening a new, a little more step, and one more step ahead. It was very
So when you would
interesting.
get to these states, were you like going out of body? Were you traveling through space?
Well,
if you could kind of break that down for our listeners so that they can get a picture of what was happening. You had high emotions, and you were very joyous, ecstatic, and
I had.
And then what was going on? You were traveling in space or something, out of body, or.
It was like it opened everything at once. It was very strange because I have practically very, very few things before that. And suddenly it's like I was seeing the aura around the people, but I was seeing aura around objects. I was seeing rays of light above buildings, and I have done this. I wrote this book, The Sacred Network, to explain the type of energy of consciousness that is that people are imprinting on buildings when they are praying, for example, in the temple and all that. But it's much more than that. It's related to the geomagnetic field, and then there is this very ancient science that I was making a remote viewing. There is some kind of mystery to the fact that the Celtic people came from northern Germany and Scandinavia around 2500 BC only. And when they came, all the megaliths that were loads of them between England, Ireland, and France, and more. They are everywhere in the world. But the megaliths were already there, like Karnak. We have megaliths, especially the flat tables. They are dated like 5,000 years ago. So it's like 6,000, some of them, the oldest ones. And so there was this mystery. Who was the builders of the megaliths? And
right.
Yes.
What do you think?
So I did some.
Who built the megaliths? Was that part of? See, we're tracking it down, and there's a key with the common blue-eyed ancestor, which I'm suspecting is Enki, and that it emerges from the Black Sea area, and what do you call that? Anyway, there's a common. They say there's a common blue-eyed ancestor that's common to everybody with blue eyes, and it's a man. It's one man. So I'm thinking, well, Enki was here, and then you're looking at the megaliths, which, so the Celtic people apparently are Enki's people because they have a certain blood combination and the genetic, DNA combination with the red, sandy, blonde hair, the blue eyes, eyes and the green eyes. And so if you could track it back to the Black Sea, how did they get from there to the British Isles and Ireland and all that area, through France, Germany? Have you been able to track this all down? I'm not saying this very well, but I have an understanding on this higher level that there's, I think the megaliths were built by the Anunnaki. Were they perhaps leading the way for people to migrate after maybe the Sodom and Gomorrah and there was a catastrophic event? What do you think? I'm just putting it together in my own mind.
Well,
what do you guys?
Well, let's go back to the fact that, for me, I had all those types of psi phenomena, like also the understanding, the experience of a harmony field in groups of people, like in a collective prayer and all that. But they came, I would say, it was like my late 19 years old, up to until the 20 when I was 20 years old, with some experience in a monastery in Brittany. So whatever, I had all those phenomena happening all the time. And it was becoming absolutely evident that there was an energy of consciousness. For example, when you see auras, okay, you can explain this with bio photons and all that by now. But when you see an energy like rays, straight rays, shooting out of spires, on top of churches, on temples, and they're absolutely straight and going straight into the sky. And other ones that are also shooting out of monuments, but in an arc ondulation kind of fashion, and there are different ones. There are cosmic rays and there are the cosmological waves, that turn around the earth and connect all those temples and from all religions, all sacred places. Yes. So whatever, it was absolutely, you could not explain what I was experiencing, what I was seeing, without understanding that consciousness itself was a type of energy. And so I did all my whole theory of semantic field theory in cognitive science to posit. Also, I like to remember that I was heavily influenced by Carl Jung. I have been a Jungian reader since ever, since I woke up in my consciousness around 18 years old. It all came at the same time. And for example, when I had those experiences in Brittany, in a very independent kind of order of monks that were Orthodox monks, Christian Orthodox. However, they still had the knowledge of the ancient Celtic, Druidic priest people, and I saw, I was feeling that I was in a kind of telepathy field because I could hear. So I was 19, as I said, I was hearing in my head, and it was very disturbing for me, all the minds of the 6 or 7 monks that were there. And I had to go far away, and then I discovered that there was a limit, that one step further I was out of this field and alone in my mind, and that if I would take a step backward towards the monastery, I would get all their minds again. So it was so incredibly astonishing that there would be a limit in space for something that was a telepathy field, as I was calling it at that time.
How far away did you get? How big was that?
It was a very small field. I would say that I was no more than beyond the field surrounding this big building that was a monastery in Brittany, in a tiny village, where they had a flat megalith and a church on top of, just next to the megalith. A church on top of the megalith, of the table, you know, dolmen type of thing. And I would say 150 yards, meters, you know, outside of the building, around it. And I put a marking, you know, on this tiny path going to further away in the field, so that and then each time I was going, because I was fleeing from this monastery and the people crowding my mind, you know, so I would go and I found a flat stone where I could read and think and breathe and be by myself. And each time I was passing exactly at the same place, proof I was back into this field, which was oppressive for me, until the night where we were having dinner together and everybody was talking, so it was like normal, you know. So there was also a grid in the sky, so there was an absolute necessity for me, so to find new words to describe those to myself, to understand those experiences. So at that time it was a telepathy field. Then when I had the same experience at 21 years old in the sacred town of Nasik in India, near Bombay, it was a gigantic field, this one. We are talking about the whole earth of this sacred town around the river with the ghats, you know, which are pools for people in the river, for people to bathe, have a sacred bath. And this was like, I would say, extended like, now it was maybe 2 kilometers long along the river. It was like not exactly a sphere, but an elongated, an ovoid kind of field, you know, and along the sacred temples, along the river. And it was absolutely even more stunning that there was also coming down. The first time I went down from the top of the hill to the river, to the sacred part, the most sacred part of town. At one point, in front of a tea shop, I mean, the image is still there, that the little road was turning, and plaf, I was taken into this incredible, magnificent, that field of consciousness, a so high field of consciousness, with not a single thought of nobody. So I call it a harmony field. And I had the same grid in the sky, like a geodesic grid, grayish, you know, on the blue sky. So it was really like a dome with this energy of consciousness of all the ascetics, the gurus, the sadhus, the wise people, and men and women that had been meditating for ages in this sacred town.
What was the geometric shape? What was the shape that you saw? That's very important. What shape did you see?
You are talking about the grid?
Yeah, yes. What you said you saw
it was
a pattern.
Yes, it was like the same as in Brittany. It was like, even if in Brittany the sky behind was more grayish, and in India it was deep blue, of course. Nevertheless, it's like a fisher net, with I have described the lengths. They are nearly square, but as it is geodesic, it's a little rectangular at the zenith, and it's like I would say it's like 50 centimeters, 70. It's like a moon and a half in length and a little less in width, And as it is, as you can perceive it in the sky. And it is all around.
You called it a geodesic, like if it had a solid shape, what would the solid shape be of the whole thing?
No, geodesic is just the structure of the fact that it can be calculated on a sphere. This is geodesic, So I'm talking about I'm using geodesic as a structure, a pattern, that is the pattern that can be put on a sphere. It's like as if you would put a fisher net on a sphere, and you look from inside the sphere, and you look above your head, and you see this against the sky. So the only thing I was seeing was the lines that were delimiting these geodesic facets,
Wow! Thank you.
And so I did that with the semantic field theory, and then I realized that only a few years back that you could, in fact, there was a way that you could elaborate a theory of this semantic energy, as I call it, the energy of consciousness. So in short, I call it SIG, SYG, SIG energy for semantic.
So
it's an energy of consciousness.
Sorry to bother you, but we're coming up on our break.
Yes.
So we have to take a break here. So you're listening to Divine Paradigm on KCOR. We'll be back in about 6 minutes.
You are in the Divine Paradigm with Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Some call it the hyperhuman civilization.
Share your thoughts by calling the KCOR Digital Radio Network hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide colors use Skype name KCOR Radio. Or positive potential revealed in the exploration of the paranormal after this.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network. Broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots of the higher consciousness.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Become part of the show by calling the KCOR Digital Radio Network hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide colors use Skype name KCOR Radio. Tweet your thoughts anytime by using hashtag KCOR.
It's my favorite thing to do every day.
Escape the Matrix and join the conversation live in our chat room at www.kcorradio.com. Now, back to Divine Paradigm with your enlightened hosts, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin.
And we are back, Janet, Sasha, and we're speaking with Chris Hardy. Sasha, are you there?
I'm here, indeed. We're really...
What would you like to say?
I would like to say, at the beginning of the show, I mentioned how when the truth becomes apparent and people are ready for it, many people all over who are tuned into the grid get it. And so what we found is that Chris Hardy, who we have you today, but Caroline Corey, Russell Bruninger, and others have basically said that when you reach a meditative state where you are no longer totally attached to just this 3D reality, you can reach a point where there's a portal to all consciousness, all times, more than just the Akashic record. You reach the infinite. Everything that's there, it's all there, and it's a totally wonderful thing. And what Chris has done, and what Caroline has done, is shown the mechanisms, how it works. Really exciting stuff, folks. So dig.
All right. So, Chris, we were talking about Caroline Corey's. I will hook you up with her information. She has a movie out. She was our guest last week. So, this quantum reality.
Let me finish.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me answer Sasha, because go on with him, because it's very important what he was saying, that it's true that we are experiencing now on Earth a great proportion of the population is undergoing a kind of leap in consciousness, and we are literally opening up to all kind of new capacities in a very wide range all over the world, whatever the country, the religion, the culture. All people are becoming more sensitive and prone to have synchronicities, meaningful coincidences happening that are just the tip of the iceberg of something that is happening in the collective unconscious, which is contact and the connection with this hyperdimension on which I did this theory, because not only, just believe me on that, because I don't want to spend time on that, but the whole physics is taking sense. The fact that you have quantum field with different properties than the relativistic kind of energies. Everything is making sense when you add some hyperdimension. And this is why in the new models of superstring theories and all that, M theory and all that, you have something like 11 or more dimensions, 10 or 11 dimensions. And this is because you need hyperdimension in order to make to connect together the different layers of the cosmos, which is the matter space-time layer, and then the quantum layer, which is more indeterministic. That's right. But then some people started to understand that there was a still deeper layer to the cosmos, to reality, and this layer had to be not exactly causal. I mean, Sasha, and Janet, we are always thinking in kind of in a dualistic way. It's either this or either that. either quantum physics, quantum fields are indeterministic, or the entanglement cannot happen. And if we proved the entanglement, then we have to say it's indeterministic. This is not the way it is. The way it is I believe, is that the reality is layered. And you cannot make sense of either physics, nor consciousness, nor psi phenomena if you don't allow this layered kind of cosmos, and especially with the hyperdimension, which is beyond space and time, beyond the Einstein space-time, But you have to realize that when we talk about quantum particles, because they are particles, they are above the first quantum, they are above Planck scale. And it means that they still are in space-time because they are matter particles after Planck scale. But we know very well that there is something, an immensity of reality that is before Planck scale. And this is not matter. And this is the only thing all physicists agree on, is that before Planck scale, before the first quantum, this is a big interrogation point, but we know one thing: it's not matter, and there is no space, no time yet, no causality. So what is there, And this is where I thought that even being only a system scientist and not a physicist, I thought that there was one possibility, which was a hyperdimension of consciousness, but that has also is a kind of braid, a triple system with hyperconsciousness, hypertime, and hyperspace. And then you have a grid which is allowing for information in a kind of pre-space, pre-time, pre-matter universe, in between universe bubble. So I'm in a kind of theory, a framework that interestingly is very, very much in harmony, in sync with all the ancient frameworks of we talk about the philosophy of non-duality, Advaita, Vedanta, in India, on Vedism, on the Taoism. The field of Tao is a field of consciousness. And if you have studied a little Taoism, it's very, very interesting that they understood the Tao as a pure cosmic consciousness that was so complex and so intelligent that, and yet it was not a personalized God. This is what is interesting. I've never been into this idea of a personal God, but I am into cosmic consciousness, but the cosmic consciousness that is at the same time a oneness field, and at the same time a plurality of tiny. It's like we would be in this cosmic field, even in just our universe bubble. We would be like cells, conscious cells, and so you have to put consciousness in any system, however tiny, like down to the particle, and even before the virtual particles that are before Planck scale, before matter, space, and time. And I call them sigons, meaning units of meaning, particles, virtual particle waves of meaning. They are frequencies.
Yeah.
So it's
we would call them memes in linguistic anthropology. They're the units of meaning. Memes.
Yes, semantic. I use sig to refer to semantic, which has to do with meaning, which is creating meaning in a active way, And so I have those sigons that are virtual particles. Now, if you imagine that any system from the particles to the cosmos, the universe itself, and or everything in between, like a planet, like an organ in our body, but also, of course, our own consciousness as human beings, ourself, everything would have, any matter system would have a hyperdimensional layer, attached to it. Like we have a consciousness, and it's not a duality. It's just the fact that there is an essence that is deeply penetrating all matter, And so you can explain now with such a model, you can explain that if this hyperdimension is beyond space and beyond time, beyond matter, then you can explain all psi phenomena, and you can explain all spiritual phenomena, like out-of-body experiences, the fact that you have a dream body, a dreamtime body, that you can travel instantly to Mars if you want to do that in OBE, that you can receive the thoughts of maybe aliens, hear you, Janet, and connect with other worlds, and you, because you are beyond space and time. You just have to connect with this absolute great field.
Right.
Well, the other. Are there places where does it make a difference whether you're in a place that has a big energy field or you're not? Does it magnify? Is that an amplification if you go to the right place?
Well, I must tell you something, that one day I had the surprise of my life when I was inside a huge supermarket, and I suddenly had a very, very clear, just falling on me, and remote viewing of an event on the other side of the planet. And it was like, I could not believe it, It's like, oh my God, I'm in under, I don't know how much, I'm sorry, I'm not an engineer, but thousands of tons of concrete, with this metallic grid inside to make it more strong. And so I am into an absolute Faraday cage. And yet, and I'm down, with layers on top of where I was. And I had this absolutely clear image of, unfolding of an event. It was very strange. And of course, then I attracted, as I was stunned, in the middle of an alley, looking to the sky. I mean, after a while, some people came by to see if I was not trying to steal something. So,
hey, lady, are you okay?
Of course. What you were saying, Sasha, is that when you are inside the temple, there are two things. I mean, I distinguish three types of energy linked to important when we talk about consciousness. The first one is the telluric energy, the the geo and magnetic field, which are really magnetic energy all over the earth. Yeah. Okay, and we know that the megaliths and then the temples, were always built on previous megaliths. at the same spot. It's always the same spot, and each new religion is building its own temple on the previous ones. And so we have this cosmotelluric. This is geomagnetic energy. We call it telluric, Earth's energy. Okay, and then you have the cosmic energy, which is attracted by anything that is pointed, like spire. The Eiffel Tower is just perfect, and any mountain, and that's where you have the yang energy, the dragon lines in Feng Shui, on top of mountains. And so everything pointed is attracting this cosmic energy. And these are the straight rays that are shooting from the spires into the cosmos, And then the center of the dome, a center of its dome is sometimes you always have a little pointed thing at the center. Is the other side of the roof, and this is attracting this cosmic straight rays. So the telluric energy, they are the undulating ones that are horizontal, following Earth's surface and going down like sometimes 150 yards, 300 yards. It depends on the terrain, If you are in the middle of the desert, they are very lengthy. If you are in a town, they are taken vertically because of the buildings, and each spire is attracting its own energy. So you have those undulating telluric energy, and then the cosmic energy like rays, and then you have a third type of energy, which is the energy of consciousness, sig energy. So when you are in a temple, which has been, of course, built as a crossing of the telluric, the geomagnetic lines, at the crossing where you had a megalith, and then a Roman temple, and then a Christian temple, a church or whatever, cathedral. And then those lines are crossing there. And then you have all the people that come to pray at this place. So when we pray, we are connecting with, of course, our faith and religion and the spiritual figures, but we are also connected to the place where we pray, which is the crossing of this incredible energy, which has an effect of heightening consciousness by itself, the crossing, some crossing, and some. So you are there, so you are more concentrated because of the crossing of lines on the building, which has a specific shape that is even. The stone is keeping the energy, so the stone is building up energy from those telluric lines, from the cosmic line, and from the energy of consciousness of the people praying. So it's like a condensator, And so when you are praying in a temple or wherever, at that point you are receiving the stock energy in that place, in the stones, that is very, very refined, when you have those magnificent architecture all over the world in all religions, magnificent energy type of architecture, And so you are receiving and you are giving. But of course, the accumulated energy since centuries in some places is very, very strong. Like I was talking about this harmony field, which I call teleharmonic field, telepathic harmonic field, because and then when you have this in a sacred town since millennia. Has been sacred, the place. So you have an incredible accumulated energy, and this teleharmonic field is constantly there,
Okay, wait. Can I go back, because it's a mystery. Was the supermarket built on a place where there was a sacred site before, or was it just you?
No, of course
that's a
not.
good question.
When I'm talking about the Telhar field, in some very specific places and inside most temples that have been built specifically on the grid, on the cosmotelluric grid, then that's one thing. On the energy is there accumulating and it's like permanent, on this place.
I understand.
But if anywhere in the world, even in a supermarket, this hyperdimensional type of energy, SIG energy, the energy of consciousness that is hyperdimensional, will penetrate any matter, and even a Faraday cage. Yes.
Gotcha. But I was just thinking, at least metaphorically, that the supermarket was a temple to Mr. Hollande and the socialist materialist government, and that was their temple. But I guess that's just my way of metaphoring it.
Well, anyway, you have the accumulated energy of millions of people over a few years,
Right.
But it's not exactly a sacred type of energy. It's not heightening consciousness.
We're coming up on our second break, so if you want to kind of wrap up this train of thought, and then we'll go to commercial, we'll be back for our final segment.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. We have like another minute and a half before the... Okay, now's a good time to stop anyway.
Okay,
so let's go to break.
The conscious energy, all three of them come into play. As far as I got it, anyway.
Of course.
All right, so this is a good place to break. So you're listening to the Divine Paradigm on KCOR Radio. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
You are in the Divine Paradigm with Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Some call it the height of human civilization.
Share your thoughts by calling the KCOR Digital Radio Network hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More positive potential revealed in the exploration of the paranormal after this.
5D Events invite you to Las Vegas, October 20th through the 22nd for the International Symposium of Quantum Consciousness and Healing at the Alexis Park All-Suite Resort located at 375 East Harmon Avenue. For tickets and info, go to 5devents.com. That's the numeral 5devents.com. Keynote speakers, lectures, workshops, panels, exhibits, a documentary film, and a dinner banquet on Saturday are all part of this amazing 3-day epic event, Friday, October 20th through Sunday, October 22nd from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily at the Alexis Park All-Suite Resort in Las Vegas. This is a global gathering raising consciousness, healing, peace, and transformation. Keynote speakers include Andrew Basiago, Jordan Maxwell, John Lear, David Adair, Professor Marin Kesh, and Dr. Sam Osmanagich. That's the International Symposium of Quantum Consciousness and Healing, October 20th through 22nd at the Alexis Park All-Suite Resort in Las Vegas. For tickets and info, go to 5devents.com. That's the numeral 5devents.com.
Woven throughout the universe are keys to a hidden message, awaiting a voice that can decipher their coded meaning. A cosmic connection to the cosmos. Tune in to the KCOR Digital Radio Network at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern for Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection with astrologers Caroline Lynch and Merlin Wizard. Your weekly astrology reading is but a phone call away. So call Cosmic Connection, Sunday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern and get your free reading today. Cosmic Connection with Caroline Lynch and Merlin Wizard. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
That's
Good.
Turn your radio up.
I love it. All the music I want to hear. This is my station.
Paranormal radio never sounded so good. Join the hosts of the American Ghost Hunter Show each week as they shoot from the hip without holding back.
They're kind of unpredictable, not like the rest of us.
Live every Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Come hear some of the hottest authors, investigators, as well as TV and radio personalities from around the world on the American Ghost Hunter Show.
Our survival depends upon it.
Hauntings, UFOs, cryptos. If it's branded paranormal, we'll be talking about it. The American Ghost Hunter Show. Live Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The only question you have to ask yourself, are you ready for it?
Yeah! All right!
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots of the higher consciousness.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Become part of the show by calling the KCOR Digital Radio Network hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. Tweet your thoughts anytime by using hashtag KCOR.
It's my favorite thing to do every day.
Escape the Matrix and join the conversation live in our chat room at www.kcorradio.com. Now, back to Divine Paradigm with your enlightened hosts, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin.
And aloha, we are back, Janet, Sasha, and we have Chris Hardy, and we are talking about the grid, physics, and all kinds of things. Amazing. Back to you guys. I'm kind of like here listening, and my mind is getting blown, but go ahead. Somebody, Sash, you want to take it away and summarize it, and then back to Chris.
Okay.
Well,
basically, we're saying that you can reach a hyperdimensional singularity consciousness by meditating that leads you to a place where you're not bound. Consciousness is free and bigger than the material, is free and bigger than everything, and it helps you solve any kind of tech you have. So here, finally, we have a theoretical framework that's being provided that has showing us how to get out of the matrix of causal thinking that we're locked into and rise above it. And so that's what Chris is bringing to us, and I'm really excited by what you've got to say, Chris. So,
yes, I did the whole theory based on physics, on quantum physics, and it's called Cosmic DNA at the Origin. It's a book you can find on Amazon. And so, but for what interests us is specifically the consciousness part of it. And if you take the grid of this hyperdimension, that is consciousness, hyperspace, and hypertime, we have a new dimension of rhythm, which is going to interest a lot people that are musicians. And I myself played drums, and I always had at one point I started having a very, very strong feeling that rhythm was a dimension of reality all by itself.
Yeah.
And it just kept popping up in my mind once in a while in high states of consciousness that this rhythm was something. And it so happened because also I experienced so many telhar field, telepathic harmonic field with groups of people while I was playing drums or while we were jamming a few people together with diverse types of instruments. So that's the book called The Sacred Network, and it has been published by Inner Traditions. And so the cosmology based on the hyperdimension shows the type of physical, I mean, it's a virtual physical substrate that we have to understand our own self, the higher dimension of our consciousness, the one that is not only attached to the body and the neurons, but is able to exit the body in the dreamtime body, in the OBE, out-of-body experience, or is able to connect with cosmic consciousness in some kind of high state like samadhis or high meditative states. And so now you see, through this theory, you can see that our own self with a big S, our higher self, is totally hyperdimensional, and it is only it is pervading also all our cells and the particles in our body, in our field, but it is also purely hyperdimensional and able to connect with the cosmic field.
Yeah.
That is a hyperdimension.
Do specific rhythms, like drum rhythms, it isn't just a matter of seeing, obviously it's a matter of now we can hear, not just see, but are there specific rhythms that evoke specific kinds of connections with hyper consciousness? And is this, it almost seems like a Morse code, a series of computer codes that free you from this matrix?
Well, I don't believe. I'm sorry, I'm a little original in that sense, but I just don't believe this stuff that we are kind of imprisoned in the Matrix. Of course, I absolutely love the film Matrix. There's no problem. However, I believe that we are, as soon as you are starting to be on a quest for your own self and starting to experience high state of consciousness, whatever the way you are experiencing them. And in my book, The Sacred Network, I'm talking about telhar field being able to exist from praying together, meditating together, to jamming together, to trance dancing, to any type of group situations like concert or whatever, you know. And it doesn't matter. It's the fact that our self-consciousness, especially with a musical and rhythmical kind of atmosphere, you know, environment, are able to get in sync together in the frequencies, the high frequencies of the hyperdimension, and vibrate together. And also the words we are using, oh, he has good vibration, she has whatever, you know, it's this hyperdimension, the knowledge of it that is unconscious in us. Because if you, for example, it has been my experience that when you have huge groups of people, like in a trance dance, for example, trance dancing at a huge concert. You have everybody. I mean, if you have a few people being in sync, it makes like a huge field on taking the whole group of people. And so some people are able to realize that this is happening. Others are just enjoying the great dancing or the great music, whatever. But unconsciously, everybody knows that we are connected on the same frequencies, on the same rhythm, you know. And this is the hypertime dimension in my model. And everything is on frequencies, but those frequencies, don't forget, they are below the particle level, they are below Planck scale, but nevertheless, they are still frequencies. So it's like, and there is a new field of physics looking at that. You know, it's very, very interesting. In my book, I have gone through explaining, you know, presenting all those new theories on research on the research on rhythm, on gravitational wave, on some kind of, you know, like huge sound wave coming from all the way to Perseus, for example, incredible. And so you have this, and so the basics, the basis of the cosmos, including the space-time bubble, where we have our bodies, and including the hyperdimension, which is like a larger bubble around the space-time bubble, you know, of our own universe, which is our universe bubble, and then coming from the previous universe bubble on a very long line. And so we have this hyperdimension that is at the same time, in physics term, it's called, when it is at the same time inside the tiniest particles as below Planck scale. In any point of this space-time, you go below Planck scale and you have the hyperdimension. But if you were outside the bubble and looking all those dots opening on the hyperdimension below, you would see a blanket, a cloud that is surrounding, and it's a one stuff, it's a oneness field. You see what I mean?
Yes, indeed.
It's like,
yes.
And the physicists say that. I mean, when it is inside, below Planck scale, inside a particle, you call it compact hyperdimension. And when it is the cloud, like a layer of the universe, surrounding the universe with hyper frequencies, you know, hypertime, hyperspace, then you call it the bulk of the hyperdimension. And you have one model by Lisa Randall, and I'm of course following her grid that has at the same time the compact, the hyperdimension she's positing is at the same time compact inside the particles and at the same time in the bulk around the universe. And all this is just one little universe bubble, but then you have infinities of universe bubble on this kind of spiral, you know. So like there are pearls on a collar, you know.
But is there ever a boundary on the most inclusive cycle? And if the most, you know, that's what it comes down to. Is there an end to the bubbles that include other bubbles within them? What's that? The origin of that?
No, of course not. It's everything in this dimension is you cannot say it's infinite, but you have to say it's near infinite. You know, it's quasi infinite.
Yeah.
It's like if you imagine the hyperdimension in each of your particle in your body, which is not exactly correct, but let's imagine it like that. And then you have a hyperdimension in each of your atom, which has already so many particles. So it's like already a collective field at the level of the atom. Then you get to cells and you get to an organ like your heart. So you will have the hyperdimensional field of your organ, which is the morphogenetic field of Sheldrake,
Yeah.
This is hyperspace. This is a form. This is the system, the collective system, like a heart, has a hyperdimensional field. This is a morphic field. And it's also a field of rhythm and also a field of consciousness. So you have the consciousness of your organs, the heart. And then you go to your whole person, your whole personality, and you have your body. So you have the consciousness field of the body, and then you have the hyper consciousness of everything, which is your self with a big S, which is like connected totally inside connected to the cosmic field, the hyperdimensional cosmic, at least planetary, and then, more and more. So it's quasi-infinite, yes.
Okay, I understand that. And then how would you account for the Sanskrit Hindu idea of Leela, that out of the inchoate cosmic beginning, there's a sort of a play where sometimes the largest is the smallest, and the hierarchy that you describe about bubbles being within other ones can be reversed. I guess when you're the size of the mouse, the cat seems really different to you.
Well, there are some. For me, I'm not into despising the body like in Christian religion or sexuality. I'm not into saying that like the ancient Greeks, that our space-time universe is only the shadow in the grotto, of a higher dimension. I'm saying that there is a higher dimension, that each one of us, we can access it, and then especially when we are in groups of people and we are getting ourselves in sync in a telepathic harmonic field, in a telehealth field, and then we are accessing, a higher dimensional part of our being, on together we are accessing it, and everybody in the group is into it. And this is creating a leap, because if I can express something which is difficult to say and rare for me to say it, at full moon, at very specific, because everything is connected. So at full moon, you have a very specific cosmotelluric energy, as we said earlier, which is already geomagnetic plus cosmic energy. And at those full moon, if you are at a certain time, if you are getting into high meditation state or high transcendent state, whatever high state you can access at this very moment and place, and you can connect to the planetary field, because at one point there is one layer which is between our own self that can have a samadhi state by oneself next to the river. Then we can have a collective state, a teller field with a group of people doing the same thing or in sync. And then you can, in one of those states, each one you can access a field of hyperdimensional self that is around our planet, and it is surrounding our planet, and it has always been there. It was because I know it since this same years, about 21 or so, and it's like before in the ancient times, which has seen, for example, the development of the yoga, different paths of yoga. This cosmic consciousness, the illumination, was achieved at a very, very late time in life. Why? Because this field of communion between the sense, communion of the sense in the Catholic religion, it refers to this planetary field. And in time past, long time past, it's like a bubble around our planet, and it was very far from the planet, very, very high energy, and very distinct from the lower energy of humanity. But as we are getting into this leap in consciousness, decade after decade, I have felt this planetary field, the bubble around the Earth, coming nearer to the Earth. Meanwhile, we are getting higher in frequencies. Our frequencies don't stop becoming more rapid and so more elevated. And so now we are able to have this telar field, planetary telar field, created very often, and especially on dates like full moons, but also some religious dates of different religions, because you have so many people that are in a kind of excited states, let's say. Even if it is Christmas, each family is kind of bubbling with energy, and then you have this access to this planetary field. And soon we are going to get to what had been forecast by Teilhard de Chardin, who was a philosopher, and he was the one to come up with the concept of biosphere, but also of noosphere, which was a mind sphere, and he was saying that the next leap of humanity, so we are talking about 70 years ago, and he was saying that the next leap of humanity was going to be the collective consciousness. We had gone through the development of our own personality, individuality, and now we are going to get to the collective mind. And that's where we are going to have all our evolution coming. So the planetary telar field, I believe we are going to get into it. And this is great. We are already getting into it regularly. Before the year 2001, with the 9/11, we had a nearly permanent planetary telar field that crashed instantly with the events of 9/11. There was
and that might be why that happened, because we were getting there. Yeah. That might be why happened, because we were getting there.
No.
Anyway,
it was the opposite. Something happened, and it crashed the planetary field. And so now we're getting back to it again.
We are. So we have 2 minutes to close. What would you like to say to our listeners?
Well, I can give maybe some guidelines to get in touch with those fields. For example, if you are in a dancing is a very blissful way, and bliss is very important. Joy, bliss, fun is very important to get high in consciousness. on to get more elevated, and it's a very interesting way. For example, me, I love to do tarot cards to develop my precognition abilities, and I've done that because it's fun, and I learn. So in transcendence, or in a kind of festive kind of environment, if you want to get into this Telhar field, you have to first get inside yourself as if you were in sync with your whole being, and then it will open on the other people.
That's a great place to end, Chris. Thank you very much. We're out of time. And thank you, listeners. You're listening to Divine Paradigm on KCOR.
KCOR. Metelo.
In 3, 2, 1.
Until next week, we must leave the world of the divine paradigm. But always remember, you all exist on more than one plane or dimension. And there is a shift coming. A shift to universal consciousness. A shift to the divine paradigm.
Divine paradigm. Divine paradigm.
For more information on the divine paradigm, as well as the hosts, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin, please visit their website at aquarianradio.com. Divine Paradigm, live every Tuesday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Your transformational future is at hand.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.